What's up guys, Asian here with the second part of the weaving video, and today we're going to be going over what I think is probably the most important thing to keep in mind when you're practicing your rotation, when you're practicing light attack weaving. So one of the biggest pieces of advice I can give people who are practicing the rotation is to slow things down. So one of the things that I read or hear about very often on Reddit, on the official forums, on the various discords I'm part of, is, oh, I just button mash when I light attack weave. While that is one method of light attack weaving, it is definitely not the most efficient way, and probably not really good for your tendons either. You're probably going to end up getting carpal tunnel a lot faster if you're mashing buttons compared to relaxing, slowing things down, and clicking buttons on an even basis here. So one of the things I always tell people when they're just starting to learn how to DPS is to slow everything down to the point where you basically not necessarily see the animation, but you're not button mashing either. So I think I have to reload UI really quickly. But one of the things that we're going to be going over is showing you guys a difference between just straight up button mashing for light attack rotation for your rotation versus just slowing things down and pushing the button about every second or so. So remember that skills have a global cooldown about 1 second each. Light attacks have a little bit less, it's about 0.9 seconds, so you can actually theoretically get a light attack ratio of higher than 1 if you are basically mashing that button and you manage to catch it right on the global cooldown. But for the most part, you will probably be sitting around 0.9 to 0.95 light attacks per second here. So you can see here that I do have the light attack helper add-on right now. Let me see if I can move over here. So this will tell me my light attacks done per second. Let me see if we have light attack helper here. So we have the counter. So this basically just jumps. Trying to find something. Okay. Probably not this add-on here, but we are still going to be using light attack helper over here so you guys can see how many light attacks I'm doing per second. And I'm going to be doing this on a knife blade. So first, I'll show you guys what light attack ratio is when we just button mash, basically just spamming the left mouse button, like so. Just pressing it every as quickly as I can, versus a more standard rotation where you're actually slowing things down and hitting the button every second instead. So we're only going to be doing about a minute just so we can get a accurate representation. But first, let me show you what it looks like when you button mash. It's a little bit difficult because of the top-down angle, but I am mashing that light attack button pretty much as hard as I can. We're not really concerned about DPS at all, we're just looking more at light attacks done per second. Only gonna be going for a minute. I am just continuing to mash my buttons no matter what. Mashing this button here. Okay. Oh, my fingers are really feeling the burn now. Okay, so that's about a minute. So we ended up with dummy 0.86 light attacks done per second. Pretty good. Not that bad, especially when you consider we have a channel spammable. But now let's slow down the rotation so we're not smashing a button anymore, and we're only going to be hitting the light attack button about once every second or so. So if we slow down the rotation here, so again, this is slowing down the rotation. So we're not basically mashing the button anymore. see here 0.89 light attacks per second instead. So definitely quite a bit faster. Or to say, we're getting more light attacks off. Oh, let's reset that again. Compared to prior to what we were doing earlier. Why is that? Think of it like a metronome, so to speak. Your light attacks will only register when you're on that tick of the metronome. So you think of it, the metronome ticking at 1/0.9 seconds. I'm not sure what that is, but it's basically ticking tick, tock, tick, tock. Whenever you hear that tick or that tock, that is when the earliest you can have your light attack go off. Now, if you're matching the button really, really quickly, you're basically putting in a bunch of inputs. So you have that tick, tock, but let's say you are mashing the button really fast. So you have like that. There is a chance that in that really long, really fast burst of inputs, what you're doing is, it's probably easier if I draw it out. So let me pick up a pad of piece of paper here. So you basically think of your light attacks as, it's a little bit hard to have a green highlighter that I'll use instead. So not dry. There we go. A little bit better. But basically what you can imagine it is, you have your timings here. So these lines indicate the earliest time that your light attacks will be able to line up. Now, if you're mashing that button really, really quickly, what's happening is there is a chance that your light attacks, I'm going to draw these like this. Unfortunately, this is a fountain pen. This is a fine nib, so it'll be a little bit hard to see them. Hopefully I'll be able to show you guys exactly what's happening here. So, it's a little bit hard to see here. We have a Sharpie. Okay. That's a little bit easier to see now. But what you're seeing here is if you're mashing the button really, really quickly, what can happen, like you see right here in the beginning, is that your light attack might actually register a little bit late compared to when the earliest input is. So you can see that little bit of a gap there. Now, obviously, if you're matching it like this, there is obviously the chance that they line up like you have here and over here, but you're also going to have a lot of ones that look like this. Basically, your light attack register is a little bit delayed compared to when it first goes in. Now, if you are light attacking kind of more slowly, what you have instead is something that looks a little bit closer to this. What you're going to get instead up here, ignore that little line there, I accidentally dragged the Sharpie, but what you get is that you're actually able to line it up a lot more cleanly, so that way your light attacks pretty much fall exactly when you can next do your light attack. So mashing it here, while it is possible to basically replicate what I have up here, you will also run the chance of having some gaps like I have here, which is why our light attack ratio on the first one, which is when I just basically mashed the left click button, was lower than the second one where I slowed down my clicking in order to get a pattern that looks more closely like this top compared to the bottom. Now obviously you don't want to take it too slow, because then at some point you will end up having a pattern that looks closer to this, but with enough training and enough practice, enough patience, you should be able to get your light attack pattern to look like this rather than this. And this can be basically is the same thing with skills as well. If you're mashing your skills button, you're not going to get nearly as many off. So an example of that would be, let's go ahead and just mash the button on poison injection here. We're gonna go for not the whole minute of just spam poison injection. We'll just go for like 15 seconds or so. We're just mashing our button as quickly as we can. So that's 16 seconds. Versus if we were to do it on the global cooldown. Oops, I don't want to do that. Let me set it again. So again, 16 seconds of just poison injection, but instead of spamming the button like I did here, we're actually going to slow it down a little bit. see here, I'm not mashing the button nearly as much. That's 16 seconds. If we go ahead and take a look at how many times we managed to cast poison injection. On the slower one, we cast it a total of 17 times. Over here, we also cast it 17 times, but notice that I mashed my buttons very, very quickly here, and I basically didn't get any sort of additional advantage here. I got 17 hits here, 17 hits here. But the downside of running it like this, where I basically am mashing the buttons, is my fingers are going to get tired. They're very, very quickly. So definitely slow things down. There's really no point in mashing buttons, whether that's the ability keys up here or your light attack up here. So again, slowing things down is the key to practicing your rotation and getting a good light attack ratio. Take a look at the dummy parse here. Light attacks, we got 41. This is the slow and steady one, so we have that pattern going, that tick-tock pattern. Versus over here, where light attacks we only got 36. So we actually got fewer light attacks by spamming the button compared to actually taking our time to time our light attacks out. So definitely best piece of advice I can give you guys who are having troubles learning your rotations is slow things down. The best way to learn how to light attack weave is actually just to practice on just one skill at a time. So here, for example, on a Nightblade, for example, I would probably say work on weaving using your spammable. So in this case, Rapid Strike. Get the timing down. Once you get that timing down, you can start adding in other abilities. But until you can get your light attack ratio up to 0.9 like I have here using your spammable, there's honestly no point in practicing your rotation. Practicing your light attack weaving is a lot more important. Now this is going to be lower than 0.9 because Rapid Strikes is a channel. But that's basically more or less what you want to do. And then what you want to do next, set the dummy so we get out of combat to reset the light attack counter. What you want to do next is then introduce two abilities. So let's say we're on our bow bar here. So we're practicing just on one ability first. And then we just do that again. We practice on two abilities now. And then you practice on three abilities. Go back and forth between all your abilities. And so practice that rotation one ability at a time. A lot of people just jump straight into doing the full rotation without really caring about your light weaving. That's generally speaking not the best way and not the most efficient way to practice your rotation. It's better to break it down into small chunks in the beginning. Practice weaving first, weaving just that single ability, then add on your second ability, add on your third ability, and so on and so forth until you're able to get your full rotation complete. That's basically my probably the best tip I can give people who are practicing your rotations. Slow things down. There's no need to mash buttons. There's no need to speed through your rotation like you see on the videos, build videos, Outcast, Lico, myself, other sort of content creators. There's no reason to go as fast as they are when you are learning. It's better to slow things down and then gradually start to speed things up and get more abilities in as you practice your light attack weaving. But that concludes this second half of weaving and animation canceling here on the beginner guides. If you guys have any questions at all, feel free to leave them down in the comment section below. I'll try to answer them to the best of my ability. Hope you guys found this video informative, and I'll see you guys in the next dungeon.